Okay, that's actually a very large box. I've actually never had a box from this series before, even though I have the 9x9 on hand. But what happened was that my 9x9 was second hand from a friend. For the 8x8s, this one I just won the giveaway and it came in the original box. You probably can already read from the title, but this is the Qiyi 8x8 V2. I actually do not have the V1 on hand. The entire story of why I have my current combination of 8x8s and 9x9s is actually explained in my video of the Qiyi 9x9 V2. You can check out the video for this cube. Meanwhile, straight away, you can already see on the box, this cube has the anti-deforming mechanism on it, which is why I'm very excited for this cube, because when it comes to 8x8 and 9x9 in particular, the pops and deforming lockups of the second layer are pretty common, and having that mechanism in the 9x9 was a huge game changer. So between the V1, which is this one, and the V2, which is this one, I actually got a lot of pops on the V1, especially on the second layer when doing the last turns. And then the V2, I pretty much got like 0 of that. So right away, this feels really small. Because I have seen the statistics of this cube online and it's 64mm. First cube I'm going to compare with is the Aofu WRM, which is supposedly 64.5. Yeah, the two of them look almost the same size, and not just that, the outer layers look like they are exactly the same size. Of course, this being an 8x8, the next most natural size comparison is the Tiansheng 8x8s. So right away, the Qiyi 8x8 actually looks much more square than the Tiansheng 8x8. Although, okay, I have done a mod to the Tiansheng 8x8, but even if you look at the holes that I didn't mod, the Tiansheng holes look slightly bigger than the Qiyi at first glance, although it's only a slight difference. But yeah, I would probably do the 9-hole mod to the Qiyi. I mean, the other cube to compare with is the Qiyi 9x9 V2, which is actually the same size as the Tiansheng 8. So if I line up these two together and stack up the Warrior 7x7 on the other side, you see the 8x8 V2 is actually more similar to the Warrior 7 in size than the 9x9 V2. And another thing, yeah, and just putting the numbers together mathematically, 62, 64 and 68, this is a 2mm jump, this is a 4mm jump. So first turns, it's really fast. It has a slight sandy feel, probably because it's new. I've not experienced that with the 9x9, mostly because I got it second hand. So it's probably already broken in and smooth by the time I've played with the 9x9 for the first time. But for the 8x8, this is really my first time taking a cube from this series out of the box. So yeah, it does have a bit of that new cube feel, but I do see it going away with time and with loop and getting to where the 9x9 is right now in terms of smoothness. Right now, the magnet strength isn't that balanced as well. I feel like, yeah, I feel that the outer is a bit strong, and then the subsequent ones are, especially the second, sometimes it can feel a bit weak. But I do think with proper setup, my opinion on the magnet strength may change a bit. Other than that, this is pretty good. Yeah, now I'm going to try to force a deforming lockup. You can see that there is an anti-deforming mechanism inside. Here you can see even more clearly. Compare that with the Tiansheng 8x8, which does not have the anti-deforming mechanism. Okay, I've tensioned the cube really tight, but you notice things like that could happen. I'm actually slightly disappointed that the 10x10 of this series does not feature the anti-deforming mechanism, even though there's enough space to design it in. At least glad that 8x8 has it, and 8x8 is definitely the cube that I'll be playing with much more than 10x10. Yeah, just to compare pieces since I can. Okay. So comparing the pieces, at first glance they look similar, but as pointed out earlier, there's one major difference, which is the Tiansheng 8x8 does not have the anti-deforming mechanism, while the Qiyi 8x8 V2 has the anti-deforming mechanism. Another major difference is that the Tiansheng has a 3-shell design, so okay, you can see a little bit here. When I pull the corner aside, you can see that there's something here that my pin is pointing to. Yeah, this is actually a 3x3 shell, so this edge actually locks down the corner, and like this internal midge, it has like 1, 2 and then 3. Like this is the third wing at the very bottom. This one at the corner will lock together and it forms a 3x3. Then on top of the 3x3 there's a 5x5, so you can see that this is the main piece of the main edge piece of the 5x5, and then this piece here and this other piece that correspond to this one, and of course the second shell here is just linked to the centerpiece itself. Then of course right here outside is an 8x8. So with the Qiyi 8x8 on the other hand, it's only 2 shells, so you can see that there's only 2 levels of wings, and the 3x3 actually doesn't exist. Instead, the lower shell itself is already a 5x5, one here and then here. This is the T center. This is the same piece, like it's physically connected. It's the same piece as this one. So this, and then of course outside here is your 8x8. So this overall has made, I feel like the original Mei Long series, which also has 3 shells, and the MF series, even older than that, also has 3 shells. I feel like it made all these cubes very slow and stiff. Whereas with the Qiyi 9x9 and 8x8, like even the version 1 itself, like the version 1, which I don't have the 8x8 but I have the 9x9, it felt less pressed together and less tight than the Qiyi ones. And I found the 2 shell design where it's a 5x5 inside the 8x8 or 9x9 much nicer to turn. And of course with the V2, it not only made the cube smaller, it made it smoother as well. Of course, another difference, and this one is advertised in Qiyi's material, most even layer cubes, which the Tiansheng 8 is also included, it has 2 magnets here that are opposite polarity. Just for fun, I'm going to recommend my Aofu V7 video here. I explain a lot about magnet polarity and what the double magnets actually mean, and the repulsion issue. You can check that video out for more detail. But what this Qiyi 8x8 has done is they have done another strategy, like a different strategy from the Aofu V7. But it's also another strategy to reduce the repulsion effect, which is instead of taking 2 magnets, they put 1 magnet and they use both poles of the magnet. So I can't really see how, like in theory, this reduces the repulsion strength. Ultimately, I still think that there should be some repulsion, because when you turn it slightly, the same pole will meet each other. So overall, I'm feeling very optimistic about this 8x8. We set this cube up, do a bunch of solves, and come back with a final opinion. But right now, I would say that based on everything I know about this 8x8, it's pretty much very close to, if I had the freedom to design any kind of 8x8 I want, I would probably design it with this exact same set of features with this size. Maybe I wouldn't think of this magnet feature. This one is a unique idea that Qiyi came up with that didn't cross my mind. But other than that, I would say everything else about this 8x8, from its size to like the 2 shell design and the anti-deforming mechanism, these are pretty much everything I would want to see in my dream 8x8. The only thing that this is missing is the 9-hole mod, which I will probably just do eventually. As I'm Florian modding the cube, I'm going to end up accidentally destroying a feature, so I'm going to talk about this feature first. But the Qiyi 8x8 V2 actually features an RS3 mechanism. So what I meant by RS3 mechanism is the center is sharp at the bottom and the corner is hollow at the bottom, and then they're both round on top. So the 2 round parts can reverse corner cut against each other. The sharp center base adds more stability, but it doesn't reduce the reverse corner cutting because the corner is hollowed at the same height, so there's nothing that the sharp tip of the centerpiece can catch against. So this design also shows up in the VIN 4x4. But okay, for the Qiyi 8x8 V2, here is what it looks like. You can see that the center is physically less rounded at this angled spot here, but the corner is hollowed at the same area. Unfortunately, when I Florian mod the cube, since I'm going for this arc shape, this feature is going to get destroyed. But I personally prefer the Florian modded structure. Okay, and then just to take a closer look at the mechanism of this cube, yeah, you can see the anti-deforming mechanism up here, and then inside is 2 shells. These 5 pieces will sit like that, which will form a fully functional 5x5, even if you take away the other pieces, and then the remaining pieces are stacked on top to give you the 8x8. For the core corner magnetic distance, I can see a slight gap between the corner piece and the core. It's quite close but not fully touching. I would say the distance is comparable to what I've done inside my Mei Long 6x6, and the kind of core they use is also similar to what kind of core the Aoshi WRM and the Mei Long 6x6 would be using, where let me take the middle piece again and compare it with the middle piece of the Mei Long 6. Like, notice that they are comparable in thickness. If you watch my Shadow V3 video, you'll notice the Shadow V3's core is much thicker. I would say that the thicker one is with the older generation design, while the thinner one, it allows you to design your other pieces bigger to push them in a bit further. And as you can tell, the corner base is pretty big here. With Qiyi, they use a green core, whereas Moyi, they used to have teal cores, but a few years ago they changed it to whites. But other than the color difference, it's like quite hard to see from here, but I can tell that it's physically the same model of like core structure. And then like this red part on top is similar to the Hong 5x5, where they just glue an extra part on top of the core. Here's another cool fact found from disassembling the cube. So the rings from the XB alignment mechanism are locked apparently from both the top and the bottom. So if you compare this to most of the even cubes out there, these two rings would have fallen down, and when you need to assemble them again, you have to pull them up to the highest height and then shove in like the neighboring pieces like the midges and all that. I also found a slight difference in the corner design compared to the 9x9, because with the 9x9, both of these anchors will be hollow, whereas the 8x8 design is more similar to the vast majority of big cubes out there, where the bottom one or the more inner one is hollow and the top one is solid. The card that this cube comes with also gives a bit of hint. The text here actually says 创新尽量磁体定位, which translates to innovative radial magnetic positioning. The name of this system alone, or the picture alone, doesn't make much sense, but putting them together, radial and positioning, having two magnets here at two different radius actually would mean that at a shorter radius you can probably feel the attraction and repulsion at a wider angle compared to the larger radius. So my theory about how this manages to reduce the feeling of like the slight repulsion when your even layer cube is turned slightly like that and the two similar poles meet each other is that my theory of how the Qiyi 8x8 sort of tries to avoid that is to get the smaller magnet to give you an attraction feeling while the bigger magnet is repelling. So just to show you that this is actually, it attracts here, and here it repels, so I have to attract the other side. So this is one magnet, but it uses both poles. But actually, there's actually a magnet here. I didn't notice this earlier. I only found out after the drawing, and I decided to try sticking some magnets here. One difference with the real cube compared to the drawing is the drawing seems to show that it's the same pole, like both magnets follow the same pole. Whereas here, on the actual cube, it's found to be opposite poles, because using this pole, the magnet, it sticks more to the left side. But when I put it on top, it sticks more to the right. And if I flip it around, now it repels the right and it tries to stick to the left. And then when I bring it to the bottom one, it sticks to the right instead. Which I don't think is that big of a deal compared to this drawing, because these two circuits don't interact with each other. Instead, they interact with other magnets in the same circuit. So as long as within the inner circuit is consistent and within the outer circuit is consistent, you get the same result, whether the inner and outer have the same direction or opposite directions. And just for fun, let's just translate everything else. 径速小尺寸, smaller size. 轴磁定位, core magnets. 双中心微稳结构, two shell design to make this more stable. 竞速轻量化, make it lighter so you can turn faster. 火箭防贴槽, rocket anti-stick design, which this anti-stick design just looks like hexagons, but they remove some of the internal lines. 一体式配件结构 just refers to uniform internal, I think. By uniform internal, I mean like the whole inner part is one piece and then they kept it on the outside. And no, we're not doing that again. This is not a WCA event, so the legality of it shouldn't be an issue. So I've set up this cube, done a bunch of solves, and I can now give a much more developed opinion on it. The setup I've done is obviously the 9-hole version of the Florian mod, which I've also done to a number of my other even-numbered big cubes, and also some lubrication with like cubical angstrom dignitas on all 4 layers, and a bit of DNM on the first layer with cubical speedy on the second, third, and fourth layer. Size-wise, I do think this is pretty nice. If you were to stack up the Meilong 6, Warrior 7, and this Qiyi 8x8 V2, it does look like a proportionate size increase between the 3. However, I do not think that 7x7s and 8x8 should get any smaller than this size. I do feel like there's a limit where sizing the cube any smaller starts to make it annoying, and if the sizes stay at where they are right now, I would say that it's pretty good. The feel is mostly smooth with some scratchiness to it, likely due to my 9-hole mod. Although I do think it was smoothened out as I play with the cube more, and those sanded down areas also naturally smoothened out. Stability wise, it's stable enough to be good, but not overly stable that it becomes stiff and rigid, and in fact it feels like some middle ground between the Warrior 7x7 and the Meilong 7x7, with the Meilong being the most stable one of these 3, but still being really fast and fluid on its own. and also really light, while the Warrior 7 also pretty light, but it has the most fluidity, but it doesn't go to the area where it starts to become unstable. I still think this is solid and stable. So the Qiyi 8x8 is somewhere in the middle in terms of its stability, and I would say speed wise it turns with similar speeds to either of those 7x7s. At least on its outer layer, while the second, third, fourth is a little bit slower, which in my opinion this is a good thing because I do want the inners to stay together and I don't want to accidentally double turn when I only want to do a single turn. The corner cutting goes slightly more than one piece, which is pretty nice, while the reverse corner cutting is, I would say on the default cube, it might be almost close to non-existent, but in my version with where I performed the 9-hole Florian mod, I do think any cuts that is smaller than the hole size feels pretty effortless, and if I were to do the OL parity, which relies a lot on the 4x1 holes, it flows with fluidity almost like a 6x6 cube, and the algorithm is actually pretty nice to perform. The deforming lockups are not completely erased like they are on the 9x9. I do find that I can still get them a bit, but it's not enough to make the cube annoying. And just comparing against the 9x9, the 9x9 feels more stable and like the ball core actually feels stronger, whereas the 8x8 itself, the ball core doesn't feel as prominent, and I do find that cube flexes a bit more than the 9x9. However, the 9x9 also feels a lot heavier, not just because it's a bigger cube. I actually feel like the density of the 9x9 is heavier, whereas the 8x8 itself is lighter and faster. The Qiyi 8x8 V2 is basically the best 8x8 on the market without much to compare against. The previous best 8x8 before this cube is probably a toss-up between the Qiyi 8x8 V1 and the Tiancheng Galaxy 8x8. Both of these models are at least more than 3 years old at this point in time when filming this video, and neither of them even come close to the Qiyi V2 in performance. The Tiancheng Galaxy is probably the more common one of these two, since it's the only flagship magnetic option you can get before the Qiyi V2 comes out, and it's also faster and lighter than all the 8x8s before it, maybe except the Qiyi 8x8 V1. However, it's still significantly slower and stiffer than most of the 7x7s in its type. The Qiyi 8x8 V1 is not factory magnetic, but I have tried a third-party magnetized one from a friend before, and since it's a 2-shell cube and not a 3-shell cube, it's actually more fluid and flexible than the Tiancheng, without being overly unstable, which is probably what I think would happen to a 1-shell 8x8. The friend which I borrowed it from at that point in time also said it's less easy to pop than the Tiancheng. The problem with the Qiyi V1, however, is that it has the weird color scheme that other Qiyi budget cubes have, and you also need some skill and dedication to set it up because it's not factory magnetic and it's pretty terrible without the magnets. The Qiyi 8x8 V2 in comparison turns with a speed and lightness comparable to competition viable 7x7s such as the Warrior and the Meilong, and the size also feels very comparable with those cubes. My average with the Tiancheng is around 540, and with the Qiyi V2 I can get timings as low as 520, and if I really want to put my heart into practicing 8x8, I do believe that grinding an even faster global average on this cube is possible. However, I do think the Qiyi 8x8 V2 is going to be more on the expensive side, so if you want the best budget 8x8s, the Qiyi V1 might still be a go-to option since the Tiancheng itself isn't cheap. Just be prepared to either go through the effort of setting it up or just buying it for the sake of a functional 8x8 to solve, but not to speed solve. If you want the best 8x8 possible to speed solve, the Qiyi V2 is the one to get. I personally like even cubes more than odd cubes, and the Qiyi 8x8 V2 is definitely a very fun puzzle to play with, and one of the better ones if you want to expand your big cube interest beyond the WCA events.